Good afternoon and welcome to our December 9th meeting of City Council. The council chambers are decorated in cheer, poinsettias, and it's that time of the year. The invocation tonight will be given by Councilman Jeff Roberts and respects of the flag will be led by Mayor Pro Tem Tony Stewart. Please rise.
Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, as we enter this holiday season, let us pause and give thanks for all the ways that you have blessed our lives. We pray for the ability to reflect upon the ways that you have blessed this nation and the city of Anderson, and the humility to acknowledge that these blessings are derived from you. We also pray that this season will be a time of joy for our families and a time of hope for the future. God bless this council, the city staff, and all of the city employees. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get into our meeting tonight, we have a special presentation. The Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for our 2018-2019 fiscal year. David Phillips is here today. He's a CPA and partner with Green Finley, LLC. And I would get Mr. McEwen to cue this one up for us.
Yes, sir. Mayor and council, it's that time of year where we report on our previous fiscal year. We'll have some good news for you tonight in the presentation. I do want to give thanks to our finance staff. Go ahead and do that. They spent a lot of time on this. It's a 6 months process, really half the year, and we report at the highest level financial reporting you can do from municipal government, and that's a CAFR, or Comprehensive Financial Report. And so with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Phillips, CPA partner with Green Finley, to give kind of a high-end recap of the financial statements for you. Mr. Phillips.
All right. As you see before you, we're going to go through this PowerPoint. If we tried to actually go through this, that would probably kill you tonight, make you not have a good holiday season. And so we're just going to try to hit the highlights. But as we go through, if you have questions, please feel free to ask them. If you want to wait to the end, that is fine as well. All right. Well, what we like to remind everybody is look at your significant internal control processes, and we try to see, are they operating appropriately? Also, the next thing here, these are your financial statements. So even though we may help prepare this big book that you will ultimately get, your staff really looks through, ticks and ties the numbers, makes sure it agrees to their systems, and they provide us a lot of changes and comments so that they really are their financials. All right. We're going to look at our responsibility here is to issue an opinion. Remember, we look at things from materiality. I know for some of you, a penny may be material. But for us, it's probably around 2 to 3%. And so they designed the auditing standards in such a way that there's a cost-benefit relationship. If you wanted us to audit it to 1/10 of 1%, your audit fee would be 10 to 15 times higher than what it is. So what they have done is they've tried to get you to a level of about a 90 to 95 degree of certainty that things are materially correct. You've received an unmodified opinion. That's a clean opinion. If it was modified, we would say everything looks good except for something. And you really don't want one of those. All right, well, let's look at one of the key items here, and that's your general fund. And really, it's the fund balance. Your fund balance increased $1.1 million from 13.8 to 14.9. You have some various components of fund balance that are restricted or committed or assigned and so forth. Some of that is the 1.137 that's unspent tip monies. Remember, those monies can be only used for specified purposes. But you also have assigned fund balance of about $4.7 million that you set aside in your fiscal year 2020 budget, that you appropriated. And remember, a lot of that was carryover. Carryover related to projects that were taking place in fiscal year 2019, like the City Hall improvements, the EDI and so forth. And so some of that work didn't all get done, and so it got reappropriated into your fiscal year 2020 budget. Look at your chart there in your fund balance. That's always a nice trend. One thing I want to remind you, though, if you don't grow your fund balance, if you just kept the dollar amount the same, every year that percentage will go down. Because remember, when we look here at your unassigned, if you don't grow it, your expenditures usually go up every year. And so if you want to keep a percentage like 28 the same, well, next year, guess what? It's got to be more than 8.8 million. Otherwise, that percentage will begin to drop. The GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association, is kind of like the Bible of governments. It recommends a minimum of 2 months of unassigned fund balance. And as you can see, you're ahead of that target there. All right, so why do you want to maintain a strong unassigned fund balance? Remember, some of your cash flows are cyclical, property taxes, business licenses, and so forth. It gives you flexibility. It helps you with emergencies and unanticipated expenditures. It gives you a better rate when you do have to issue debt. If they see that you have a good track record of managing your fund balance, they're going to give you better rates than somebody who's doing this or going all up and down and all around. It helps you with, the state and the unpredictability of how they may fund you in the future. It's just important due to uncertain economic times. All right, well, let's briefly here look at your revenues. They were a total of $29.9 million. The biggest component there is $13.4 million in property taxes, TIF taxes, and penalties and interest. Another big component is the $10.8 million. Those are a lot of your growth revenues. So when the economy is going well, guess what? Those will go well. If the economy ever returns, they can go down. So let me give you a little history. If you look at your business licenses, and let's say you went back to about 2004, that balance was about $6.2 million. Guess what it is this year? $10.8. The peak and valley on some of these can really change if the economy turns. So I just want to always remind you that some of those growth revenues, right now we've had a long economic recovery. It could change if we go into a recession. Those would dip down. Also here, if you look at your revenues, they increased about $1 million over the prior year. This year, you actually hired an outside professional firm to help look at your business licenses, and you were able to collect a lot higher percentage of past due and some current business licenses than you've had in the past. That created a big increase in the current year. When we look at your general fund, actual revenues came in about $1.5 million over your budgeted revenues. And it's primarily in those same areas, business licenses and prisoner per diem there. Remember also, you had some transfers in from your utility funds. They pay kind of like a fee in lieu tax to the general fund because there's a lot of time and effort that is placed by your management on running that operation, and it's a way to kind of recover that cost. And that's what those transfers in are generally for. All right, well, let's look at your general fund expenditures. They were $31.7 million, $5.4 million in general government. Always the biggest piece that we see is usually 40 to 60%, and that's public safety. Yours was about $14.7 million. Then we have public works, and then about $6.1 million in other. This did increase about $2.7 million or 9%. We kind of list the various functions, but the real driver here are salaries and benefits. If you remember last year, you had a lot of positions that were not filled. They were open. And so a lot of those positions got filled this year. And then also remember that you had some salary increases and benefits because you adopted a citywide compensation plan. And all that kind of kicked in this year as well. But the real measurable for you as a council, I believe, is how did you turn out related to the budget you approved? And you came in under budget by about $500,000 or 2%. So you remember we were talking about revenues. You came in above budget on revenues. You came in below budget on expenditures. Those are both two good things. When that happens, you generate a good increase in your fund balance. And it gives you the ability to set aside funds for capital projects or economic development items that you're wanting to maybe anticipate or consider. All right, well, let's look at your hospitality fee fund. The revenues here for the first time went over $3 million. You're up to $3.1 million. This was about a 6% increase. Expenditures and transfers out were about 1.8 compared to about 2 million, but you added about 1.3 million to fund balance. That gives you resources to deal with tourism-related costs in the downtown and so forth. We're briefly going to look at your sewer and water enterprise funds on the next slide. Remember, this is over a $100 million operation that you have. You have lots of infrastructure and assets. Sometimes you don't think of it as such, but there's a lot of resources that are tied up into that. Your sewer fund had an increase in net position of about $899,000. And then we just list some of the other measurements from revenues to expenses. Your water fund had an increase in net position of $233,000, but the big driver this year is you had a little bit of a rate increase, a scheduled rate increase, and that drove some of those higher revenues there. All right, we're going to briefly look at your net pension liability. Remember, you participate in the state retirement plan, but you also have your own retirement plan. And so the city pension plan, you actually have a net pension asset of about 1.3. It decreased 3.2 million from the prior year because we measure your assets and liabilities for that plan as of 12/31. So that was measured as of 12/31 of 18. Well, the market had went way down. If it holds to where we are today, you're going to see that asset go up a whole bunch, as long as nothing bad happens between now and 12/31/19, because it will get measured as of 12/31/19 in your 6/30/2020 financial statements. That's the way the accounting rules work. As it relates to your participation in the state police officers' retirement plan, it's not such good news. The liability there is about $15.5 million. It increased about 1.2. And you can say, why did that increase so much? Well, as your salaries go up, guess what? Your contributions that you're paying into the state PEPA plan go up. And so the way they calculate what your liability is they take your percentage of contributions into the state divided by all contributions into the state for those plans. And whatever that percentage is, you get part of this, $4 or $5 billion liability sitting on the state level. And so that's what took place here. The real driver here is the third to the last bullet point is how your rates are going up. They've been going up 1% for several years now, and they're going to reach 21.24% in fiscal year 2023. I want you to think about how much that is and think that your employees are also paying 9%. So 30 cents on every dollar on a PRS employee is going to the PEPA. At least somebody's paying it. That's a pretty steep cost when you compare that to a lot of other states. There's a lot of note disclosures in the financials if you ever want to read them, and we just kind of list where those can be located. All right, we're looking at your other post-employment benefit. I know that's kind of a strange term, but that's really retiree health insurance. And that liability is about $1.3 million. Really didn't change much from the prior year. All right, we're going to look briefly at your capital assets. They were $154.8 million. They decreased $4.9 million from the prior year. And you say, well, how do your assets decrease? Well, we did have some additions, if you notice there, in governmental activities of 1.3, and we kind of list what some of those are. And then we had some additions in our utility funds, 2.2, but we also depreciate those items. And we did not have as many additions this year as we had in prior years, so the depreciation exceeded the additions this year, and that's why it went down. And then we list what your total depreciation expense was, 2.7 and 5.5, so 8.3 million in depreciation expense, and that's why the total capital asset balances went down. All right, we're going to briefly look at your long-term obligations. They were $110.3 million. They decreased $5.4 million. In your governmental activities, you just pretty much just made your regularly scheduled mortgage payments in essence. In your business type activities, you drew down the last amount, about $1 million, 1.1 on the state revolving fund loan, but the rest of it, you just kind of were making your normal payments. Your debt service for the year that we're in, which is fiscal year 2020, is about, it looks like about $9.1 million in total for both governmental and business type activities. Wanted to mention to you some new accounting and auditing stuff that's coming forward. One of the biggest changes is they're changing the governmental auditing standards, and that's kind of how we have to audit governments. They're concerned, what their biggest concern is that auditors probably prepare the financial statements for probably about 98% of their governments. And they're afraid that us helping prepare these financial statements really impairs our independence. Or how can you be independent if you're doing all this? And would management really catch an error in it if we made a mistake? And so that's one thing that they're real concerned in these new auditing standards. And so they said now it's a significant threat to our independence now. And we have to do mitigating controls, safeguards to address that. Well, what we're looking at doing is either another department in our firm could check what we're doing. Margot and them could hire somebody else to check our work. They could actually prepare it themselves. Then there's several options there, but we're going to have to kind of jump through the hoops and figure out what works best. My hope is they may still let us do what we've done in the past. And that is Margot and her staff just check everything that we do. But that doesn't look very favorable right now. They're acting like that may not be sufficient or enough. There's some new accounting principle changes. The one I wanted to maybe discuss with you briefly is the one on leases. So on your utility funds, but not on your general fund or special revenue funds. So your water, sewer, and so forth, those government-wide statements, they want leases to be treated like debt going forward. So if you rented a building, $100,000 for 5 years, they want you to set up an obligation for $500,000 and a right-to-use asset for $500,000. And you would depreciate that right-to-use asset over 5 years, and as you made payments, your rent payments, you would reduce your outstanding obligation and recognize a little bit of interest expense. So they want you to treat it. So that'll be a change that will kick in fiscal year 2021. All right, lastly here on the compliance, we've tried to look at your internal controls, and as I mentioned earlier, if there was any issues, it's important that we not only communicate it to management, but to you. We did not come across any findings, significant deficiencies, or material weaknesses. Remember last year, we did have one related to the period of performance compliance requirement related to your CDBG program. Well, that finally got fixed. Remember, like 2 years in a row, we had that finding, that got addressed, and you were able to meet this requirement this year. There's a management letter that will be included inside your report when they hand it out. It's required communications. If there's issues, if we had disagreements with management, if they were hard to deal with, we would have to note those issues in there. There's really nothing to report there. Last slide here, again, you have an unmodified opinion in good financial condition. One thing I did want to just say, you really have a good staff. And I know we've had some changes from Peggy to Margot, but I tell you, it's gone really well. And I feel like they really have a good team. They get along well. They work well together. And that isn't always can be said of every place we go. Any questions? I know I'll go quick.
Thank you. Comments, questions?
I have one.
Okay.
Mr. Lockwood?
When you go back to the slide that says future changes in accounting principles, and you're talking about the GASB on leases,
Yes.
if we had that in effect today, how would that affect us today?
Well, the good thing about for you is you don't really do a lot of leases. We do have a few governments out there that will lease property or something, but most of yours, you're really going total debt.
Right.
Or it wouldn't qualify. It isn't really a long-term lease.
Okay.
So I don't think there's going to be a major impact. Yeah.
I just very
Mine's on the same page, the future significant changes in the auditing principles. Can we assume that our costs in accounting are going to go up?
Yeah, probably, unfortunately. It's like a mandate.
Sure, unfunded mandate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfunded mandate.
Yeah.
We're used to that.
Yep.
But I think to that point, what I've noticed over the years is that the accounting principles want government to look like business.
Right.
You comment on that?
Yeah, I was really scared. You know how you have your general fund and your special revenue fund? It's pretty much cash or soon to be cash. It's like, you can record cash and receivables, but you don't record capital assets on your general fund. You don't record debt on your general fund. Well, they're re-looking at all the financial statements, and I was really afraid that they were going to make governments move to a corporate America way of reporting everything on the full accrual basis, just like your utility funds. Well, they've issued some preliminary guidance, and they're not going to do that on your governmental funds. They're going to allow you to keep those. But again, they want more symmetry between the two because they want people to be able to look at either a bank or you and be able to assess it the same way. And so they're making them closer and closer, but we're not going all the way there on the governmental funds yet.
Good, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, guys? Thank you, sir. Thank you to our finance, Margot, and your team.
Thank you, Margot.
for putting all that. And I know the divisions had a lot to do with that too, but thank you. The minutes of as Margot's passing out the book that you'll read tonight. The minutes of our November 18th meeting have been distributed. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Not hearing any, do I have a motion to approve? First by Dr. Thompson. Second by Mr. Locke. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? The minutes. We have 3 items of old business, and the first item is request second reading of ordinance 19-14 to amend the Plan Development District of PDD document for Mystic Vineyard subdivision located off Reed Road. Mr. McEwen.
I'll call Mr. Maurice McKenzie, the Plan Development Director, to present this item to you.
Thank you. This request did come before you at your November 18th meeting, and you did approve it on first reading. And since that time, there have been no changes, no additional comments from the public on this. But in a nutshell, the applicant is a property owner in Mystic Vineyard subdivision, and they are requesting to revise the PDD document to allow accessory buildings in rear yards. And the PDD document is that of a rezoning or of a zoning classification in the subdivision. So anytime you make any revisions to a PDD document, it goes through the same process of that as rezoning, and that's what we're going through now. The current plan development district document does not allow accessory buildings, but the homeowners covenants, the homeowners association, as a matter of fact, they see it otherwise. They actually approved the applicant's accessory building in the rear yard. So for consistency purposes, we're recommending to make some changes to our PDD document so it mirrors that of their documents. And essentially, we would like to change the language where it currently says that accessory structures are not permitted. We want to change that to the accessory building shall be permitted with architectural approval of their homeowners association and also meeting the city's setback requirements for accessory buildings. And again, there have been no changes, and we do bring this to you for second reading, and we recommend approval of it.
Thank you. Comments?
I have.
Ms. Locke?
Are we voting on 2 things? Voting on the change of the plan of what they're doing at the Mystic Vineyards, and also change in our ordinance?
This will just be a change to the Plan Development District guidelines, which is our guidelines.
Okay.
As far as the homeowners association is concerned, we don't govern those guidelines. We're just working to make them consistent in this particular case with that. But this request is just for the Plan Development District revision.
For that neighborhood.
For that.
Yes.
That was the part that I was not understanding.
Yeah, right. Each Plan Development District document is specific to a particular neighborhood, so this is just for Mystic Vineyards.
How many times has this one been changed?
Several.
All right, any other questions, comments?
So it changes depending on the neighborhood. But
I'm sorry?
But it changes depending on what the neighborhood wants it to be.
Right, the neighborhood, they have had no negative comments toward this. Matter of fact, the homeowners association, they're the ones, along with the applicant, they're recommending it too.
So if my neighborhood wanted something, then we could decide that's what it should be.
I'm sorry?
If my neighborhood wanted something, someone had to ask about, if we decide as a neighborhood what we wanted it to be.
This particular neighborhood,
I
they're
mean,
the,
in the neighborhood.
again, this document applies only to Mystic Vineyard subdivision.
So, Dr. Thompson, answer your question there. If you're not within a subdivision, that has that's zoned
Okay.
planned development district, you're not able to do that. But so what would apply to your area, it would be the citywide zoning. And then the zoning classification for that particular area, that could change.
Clear as it,
So it's a little bit different than this.
yeah.
Okay.
General neighborhood, it would not apply to.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, this neighborhood's in my district, and I'd like to go ahead and make the motion to approve.
So, first by Hal Newton,
Second.
second by, who did that? Mr. Roberts? John Roberts? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. It passes on the second and final reading. Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. Document goes around, we'll come up with the second item of old business, that is request a second reading of ordinance 19-15, amending the City of Anderson's business license ordinance to comply with the 2018 model license ordinance. Mr. McKenzie.
This item we have discussed in great detail and at some previous work sessions, and Margot Martin, our finance director, will take it from here on the introduction of it. Margot?
Right, so tonight we are requesting a final approval of ordinance 1915, amending the City of Anderson business license ordinance to comply with the model business license. The model business license was developed by the Municipal Association of South Carolina, and it outlines language that cities can use to ensure that their business license ordinance complies with state and federal laws. Standardization of the business license and its practice is important step in helping maintain this important revenue source for the city and help reduce the procedural burden for businesses. Both the city and the model ordinance use the North American Industry Classification System to place businesses into proper classifications according to the profitability using the most recent IRS data available, which was just released by the IRS this year. Council, you have had 2 work sessions on this, October 28th and November 18th, and reviewed all the details on this. You gave approval of first reading on November 18th, and we are requesting final approval of this ordinance tonight. Any questions?
Thank you. Ms. Stewart?
Now, listen, there are going to be some businesses that are going to, I guess, come out too good, and some of them is not going to fare so well. Is that correct?
Right, depending on the rate classification. Some businesses went from a 6 to a 1, such as a nursing home, and others went from a 1 to a 2, 1 to a 3, 1 to a 4, depending on the IRS classification.
Have the businesses that's going to see the most impact, have we kind of reached out to them to kind of let them know what may be coming forward and see what their responses may have been?
We haven't because it hasn't passed yet. We can.
Well, what we talked about during the work session is that we would actually send a letter out to the businesses. But to do the survey of some, thousands of business and we don't know which way council's gonna go with it, would be a little step ahead of where we are. So, but a letter will be put together and be sent out to them explaining the changes, if they have any changes. A lot of them don't have any changes at all. And then some of them do, to the plus or to the negative for them as far as their rate classification, which changes the amount they're charged per thousand on their press receipts.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
So I was just going to say, and, with that, go ahead, and I'll just hold that.
Go ahead, Mr. Chapman.
So I just want to make sure that, based on prior discussion, we had 3 different options. Leave it as it is, share in the responsibility, and then put all the burden on the businesses. And we chose to do a shared
Correct,
response. So I just
That's right.
want to make
correct.
So the city is actually taking the city council has presented a couple different options on Normally, you go revenue neutral on this because this is not something that we have to pass this. This is something that IRS came out with new data on classification of the businesses, something that we have to keep updating from time to time in this business license ordinance that's put before us, kind of passed to us in that sense that we need to actually take action on. Something you couldn't ignore, something that you have to update for remain a valid ordinance. But what was important here, to your point, Councilmember Chapman, is that while most cities go revenue neutral on this, this council decided to share in the burden, take a loss to the general fund to help alleviate those that are affected going from a lower to a higher classification rate. And that's what that's doing. And we're taking a little bit of loss on that, but I think it's very fair to our businesses. This council's been very direct about being pro-business, and you can see that from all aspects of our dealing with businesses, and I think this is a good step forward in doing so.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Lockhart?
Since we're doing this, are we going to have a review every so often to make sure that this is working or not working? And if we do, how often we're going to have that review?
Sure. So anytime they come out with new IRS data, which is inconsistent
Three
of
to five.
how they do that. But when they do, we'll bring it back for you and do the same analysis, and then bring it for you with changes that we need to make to our ordinance.
Maybe every 2 years?
Yeah,
It's really 3 to 5 years.
yeah.
3 to 5 years.
Sometimes it can be delayed. I mean, this is the Internal Revenue Service talk.
Yes, yeah, of course. Okay.
Anything else, guys?
I make a motion to approve this, Mayor.
First by Mr. Harbin. Second by Mr. John Roberts. Further discussion? What was the amount? Was it like 167?
Yeah, you're right on it. 168.
168?
That the council decide to share in the burden, the cost, and take a loss on it instead of going revenue neutral.
Thank you, sir. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously on the second and final reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our last item of old business is request second reading of ordinance 19-16 establishing the April 2020 general election. Mr. McEwen?
Okay, so that time of year again, to set forth the schedule for the general election and move that in the direction of setting it up. Frankie McLean, the city attorney, will present this item to you. Mr. McLean.
This is requesting second reading of our ordinance, which sets our municipal election for next year, 2020, for April the 7th, which is the time required by the statute to do so. We have seats, I think 2, 4, 6, and 8 up for re-election. And we need to get, this gets us on the schedule where we have to post it in the paper and things like that. So it's necessary that we go ahead and get the ordinance passed this time so that we can get ready for the election. Our recommendation is that you pass it on second reading.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Harbin?
Mr. McLean, would there ever be a way that our election could get coincided with the general election?
Do what?
Could we ever coincide our election with the general election?
That's been requested. I think we would prefer to leave it like it is.
Okay.
In the past, the council was written.
I'll speak on that. There are a lot of cities that are moving to an off-year November general election. You know, I don't know of too many cities that actually do it during the general election.
There's not too many. The thing there is when you have the general election and so much going on with that, a lot of the attention gets put away from the municipal officials running for those positions. So this allows it to be a election just for the council members, and it allows a little more attention to it than if you were just in the general election and there's so many other positions being elected during that time.
I think the thinking is that if municipalities in general throughout the state did it November of the off year. It would be the focus at one time on, because some of our, a lot of our, 3 of the 9, we had Belton, new mayors in Belton, Honey Path, Pendleton did theirs, West Paisley did theirs. I think that's it. Maybe 4 of the 9 municipalities had November.
I was just wondering,
Yeah.
you know, down the road, if it'd be something to look at and get
The
on.
downside of that is that you would have to serve. If you ever moved it from April to November, somebody would have to serve a longer term than 4 years
With that, I'd like,
during your term.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this. I was just wondering.
First by Mr. Harvin. Second by Mr. Lockridge. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Oppose. Good luck, guys. 2, 4, 6, and at large 8. We have 5 items of new business, and our first item of new business is request consideration of appointment of the Municipal Election Commission. Ms. McEwen?
Okay, thank you, Mr. McLean. Your city attorney will also present this item to you regarding a position to be filled on the Municipal Election Commission.
Okay, yeah. Generally, the county basically handles our election based upon an agreement we have then. We still have a municipal election commission that needs to be appointed, and have terms, and they look over, they certify the ballots and certify the election, and they don't have, it's not a whole lot of time involved in it, but it is required that we have that commission to do so. We have one of our 3 that are on the commission now their term ends on December the 31st of 2019. That's Ms. Renee Fields York. All 3 of these have served for a good while, and she has agreed to continue to serve. So our recommendation is that Ms. Fields York be reappointed to the Municipal Election Commission for a term that will serve through December the 31st of 2025.
Thank you, sir. Comments, questions?
Mayor, I'd just, you know, thank them for their service and recommend that we extend Ms. Fields York's term.
We have a first by Mr. Harvin,
Second.
second by Mr. Lockridge.
I do have one comment.
Yes, sir.
I was on the election commission at one time, and you know, you said there's not a lot of work to do, but when there's a conflict, it gets a little hairy in the election commission. So we do appreciate these folks and all they do, especially in times like that. Hopefully it won't happen, but if it does, they're the folks that have to make the decisions. So,
I didn't know you served on that commission. Good deal. Any other comments?
One comment, as you move forward, just please be aware, I guess, if you haven't, I know I've got notice that polling places have changed since the last time. So places where I normally voted for 20 years have changed, and so they should send you out a new registration card with your new polling place. So pass that along to your constituents as well.
Very good.
thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Our second item of new business is request consideration of the appointment of municipal court judges. Ms. McEwen?
Mayor and City Council, according to our municipal city code 58-2, specifies that municipal judges shall be appointed by council for a term not less than 2 years nor more than 4 years. This is also consistent with South Carolina state law. Before you is the request in consideration of reappointments for municipal judges: Honorable Josh Allen, Honorable Richard E. Thompson, the Honorable Richard B. King Jr., the Honorable Gertz Eaton, and the Honorable Stacy Blair for appointment for 2 years, beginning January the 1st, 2020, and running through December the 31st, 2021.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, any comments?
I think that's Robert instead of Richard. Robert King.
Okay.
Didn't he say Richard?
I couldn't.
Richard Thompson.
Richard Thompson, Robert King.
Thompson and Robert King. Okay, gotcha.
Good.
I move that we reappoint these municipal judges.
First by Mr. Lockridge, second by Mr. John Roberts. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? That passes unanimously. Our next item is request consideration to purchase equipment for the Generosity Creek Water Treatment, Wastewater Treatment Plant. Ms. McEwen.
This item before you, if you can remember through our budget process, is that we set aside funds specifically for two of our plants that we have, both identical plants, 2 million gallons a day plants. And we take great care, as you heard our auditor talk about how significant of an asset this is to the city. We've established funds to ongoing replacements of pumps and different equipment that depreciate and become end of life. And so this is the request before you. Mr. Jeff Caldwell, our utilities director, will describe to you the items requested here.
Thank you, Mr. McEwen. Mayor and council, the request is part of our capital equipment plan for our fiscal year 2020. Identified the need to replace 4 aerators for our storage pond and rebuild 6 recirculation pumps that are located in our process control building. We had our wastewater treatment plant managers request bids so that we could set a not to exceed level and then go out and get competitive bids with your approval of this plan. This equipment is essential to the daily operation of our plant and also meeting our state discharge standards. The purchase is funded through our capital equipment budget, and with that we would recommend approval to exceed $115,000 for all the above items.
Thank you, sir. Stupid question. What's an aerator? Is that the one like in Caves Lake?
Yes.
Okay.
Very similar. It keeps solids suspended so they don't settle out in our basins and then they get through the treatment process.
Mr. Roberts, Jeff Roberts.
Is it proper protocol to rebuild rather than replace the pumps?
It is according to just how much it is and what is wore out. On these, the aerator, the impellers are still in good shape, so we do not have to purchase that piece of equipment.
Okay. Also, can someone help me out with the proper pronunciation of
Genesee,
Is it Genesee or?
Generosity.
without the R?
Mr. Roberts, I call it something different every single time I say it, so.
Generosity.
Yep.
Generosity, that's it.
Generosity.
I like that.
Okay.
What is it, Dr. Thompson?
Generosity.
That's what I thought. Generosity.
Okay.
Church, generosity.
Yeah,
Oh, generosity.
Yes.
Generosity.
that's what we call it, generosity.
These bids will come back before us.
No, this is your approval for us not to exceed that amount. So we did request bids from the manufacturer. We figured they would probably be the highest.
We came up with this based upon bids we've already received.
Just a quote from who manufactured the pumps, and the aerators from Aqua Aerobics, which is the aerators we currently have.
And we had to replace it before.
We have before.
And who did we use?
We use Aqua Aerobics, the aerators we've replaced. Currently, we have the stainless steel floats, if you've seen them in the ponds. These are being replaced with a fiberglass the new technologies would hold up longer.
Now, and looking at these, I know when we request bids, and I know it's not to exceed 115, I know we always like to go with the lowest price, but sometimes they don't do us the best service. What is going to be the recommendation and how that, if we get something back in the bid range and somebody's not a low bidder.
We'll go to the pump and motor equipment folks that are local that we've dealt with before, and they do us a great job. There's several of them in town.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Lockridge.
you said something a few seconds ago when you said that you're going to fiberglass versus stainless steel, that it lasts longer. That's true?
We believe it'll last
Steel?
longer, and they're about $2,000 per aerator cheaper.
Okay. Why? It seems like stainless steel would be almost indestructible.
That's what they tell us.
Okay.
We got a few of them, and they're holding up well. The last ones we replaced at Genesee were the
Fiberglass?
Yep.
Any other questions, comments?
I make a motion, Mayor, that we, approve this not to exceed $115,000. I think I'll make a motion to approve that.
First by Mr. Harbin, second by Dr. Thompson. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor say aye. Oppose? That passes unanimously. Thank you, Jeff. It's a small amount this time. Appreciate it. Our fourth item is to request consideration of an ordinance amending Article 1 of Chapter 46 of the City Code of Anderson to add requirements for fire protection and protection of the enforcement thereof. Ms. McEwen.
From time to time, we identify items in our municipal code that need to be updated to reflect current operations and other issues that we run into. Chief.
Mr. Mayor and Council, like you have in your packet, and to keep it short and to the point, what we want to do, the International Fire Code is what we operate by. And what we're wanting to do is to mirror the city ordinance to go along with the International Fire Code. And in Chapter 46, some of the things that we hadn't upgraded, as far as I know, I've been chief, we're wanting to change Chapter 46, make some amendments to it that we've added into your packet that would go along with the International Fire Code, and it would help us in the inspection process as we go through our day-to-day inspections.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chief. Any questions or comments for the Chief?
What's the major change that you're making, Chief?
Some of the things that we go is right-of-ways adjoining properties for fires. You know, now we get in some, it doesn't happen often, but we'll get into maybe a person not wanting us to come across their property to go to a fire. It's amendment to that. Burning trash and paper. It was very, very vague in the city ordinance because all it addressed was burning grass. And we seem like now more and more we're going out to residents burning leaves and limbs and yard debris, and we're having to go out and put it out and explain to them and that you know, we don't allow burning in the city. So that's one of the big things. And open burning is the big one in that. And part of in the city ordinance it talks about inspection fees, and that's something that we've never charged. And something that would help us now because we go out and we've got a really good inspection program now. We're inspecting every business in the city at least once a year. We're doing restaurants twice a year for the simple fact if they've got a hood system that needs inspecting, we're doing that twice a year. So now we go out and for the first time, of course, there's no charge. That's a courtesy inspection. We go out and do it. A second time follow up, we go back and do a re-inspect. And most of the time, everybody has everything fixed and everything's good. The third time we going back now, if it's not fixed, and then we go back a fourth time, there's nothing really there to help us or support us in re-inspection fees. And we're spending time going back 3 times and 4 times and more. And so the thing that we're wanting to add is it's not a fine, but it's a re-inspection fee of $250.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Ms. Stewart. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And for each, if they happen to go back again, it's still another $250.
Yes, sir. It would be an additional $250 each time we go back, and after that point, then they would be issued a citation that they would come appear before the judge.
Okay, good.
Ms. Stewart.
What year are we currently under the International Fire Code? 2018? So what year did we adopt?
Yes, sir. It was adopted back a couple of years ago, and actually there'll be a new code book coming out the first of the year. But we're in that current. We are still operating on that current code.
2018.
Yes, sir.
Like when you go out and do these courtesy inspections with these restaurants, that's a lot of time, a lot of effort, especially to visit all of our restaurants. What does other municipalities do with their fire department? I would think, do they not charge restaurants to go out and do those inspections to make sure that And then why are, if they do, why aren't we just kind of following suit what other municipalities are doing?
Councilman Stewart, we've looked back and I got a lot of information from, Rock Hill. And nobody is charging an initial inspection. And I agree with you, it does take time. And we do it in engine company inspections. So each fire station is going out in their area. And I take care of a lot of the new inspections for restaurants and businesses. I go with the building department and we do that. And if we have to go back on a new business and, 2 times or 3 times, the building department does charge them a reinspection fee for coming back out if they don't have everything. If they call us for their final inspection and we go out to do that final inspection and the fire alarm system doesn't work or they don't have fire extinguishers mounted or something's wrong with that business, then if we have to go back again, the building department is charging them a reinspection fee.
I just didn't see any difference, because I know these restaurants, they pay like Anderson Fire and Safety to come out to service all the extinguishers, whether it's monthly or biweekly. It'd be the same thing with us, we would have a fee that's attached, to go out and re-inspect all these hood systems. And again, it's a protection for everybody, not only for them, but for us as well, so.
Any other comments, questions? Mr. Harvey?
We got a lot of questions tonight.
Go right ahead.
Noticed, on the second page, it talks about fires, recreational fire. So that if you have an outdoor fire pit, was that not allowed before we make these changes?
It was worded a little bit different, and since we get more requests, I'll tell you, Anderson University was one of the first probably requests that we had, because they have got away from their bonfire after, you remember the Texas A&M catastrophe that happened with the bonfire. Anderson University got away from that. Well, we allowed them to do the closed pit with a screen and have fire extinguishers present. And we do that. A lot of residents in town now has a outdoor fireplace, and it's just that it's a prefab made burning. And we'll go check it out. Of course, they've got their pit with the screen on it, and they may be grilling, but it's producing some smoke. So we've kind of cleaned that up and added that in there. So if residents does want to have an outdoor fire pit that meets our code, then we'll allow that.
I think it makes common sense, and it reads very well. The second part, I'd like to commend the fire department. I know they come to my business and inspect my business and my neighbors. The one point that I'd like to commend you on is when you do go to these restaurants, I just think it's a great service to our community. It gets them out. They're familiar with the structure, firstly, but secondly, one of the things that your guys do, they don't go on peak hours.
That's right.
That is a great thing for those businesses. They go when they're slow and, they're not obstructing their everyday businesses. I see it only as a positive, and I appreciate you and your crews doing that.
Well, thank you. And we try to make it the most convenient for the restaurants and the businesses, because we realize that we have doctor's offices, dentist offices, and that sort of thing. And we most definitely don't want to go in there in their busy hours. So we make the phone calls and set up an appropriate time for us to come in and do an inspection.
Dr. Thomas?
Do you still provide free smoke detectors in residential areas?
Yes, ma'am. And fortunately enough, we've been able to have some grant money available, and we do still install smoke detectors. And we ask the residents just to call us, make an appointment. We'll come out and install the smoke detector. It's free of charge, and that because there's paperwork involved that we have to fill out to turn in. And anytime we go to a structure fire, if it's not 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, we go to the houses on each side of that residence and check them also and make sure that they have working smoke detectors.
Roberts, John, then Rick.
Chief, one question I have, and I've seen in other places it's kind of becoming more of an issue. It's the verbiage about smoke or becoming a nuisance. So to your neighbor, if you're grilling fatty hamburgers and it's smoking up really bad, they can call and say it's a nuisance. So how do we determine?
You know, and that was the reason we changed this wording in the outside grills, because we really didn't have nothing there. If we get a complaint, of course, we're gonna go check it out. And we try to, most of the time, it's not grilling food. They've got something in their fireplace that they're burning, some type of plastic or something that they shouldn't be. And, you know, we just tell them, hey, we don't allow that, so you'll have to extinguish it.
Mr. Lockwood?
You mentioned a while ago with Dr. Thompson that you gave smoke detectors out to folks. How many did you give out in 2019? Do you know that number?
That number, I can't tell you. We log it in Firehouse.
Mm-hmm.
I could run a report and tell you exactly how many we give out. You know, we probably on average, we're putting up 6 or 8 smoke detectors a month or sometimes more.
I'm making it real clear to my community group that we have about this, and they think it's just the most wonderful thing ever. And the fact that somebody will actually come out and install it for you is even better. So a lot of older folks that can't have one or don't think they can have one, they can have one through this program.
Yes, sure can.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thompson?
Just from scratching, I really want to compliment you. What is our, I guess you say, our code as far as what kind of fire department do we have? I think it's wonderful.
Yes, ma'am.
We stand.
We have a Class 1 ISO rating, if that's what you're talking about,
Yeah.
here in the city. We've had that for about 2 years now. And, you know, along with that process was the new ladder truck that y'all allowed us to buy. And, of course, Station 3 was a big part of that. And we have a Class 1 ISO rating, which is the best you can get.
We need to keep it, don't we, Chief?
Helps.
Mr. Chapman?
Chief, just to look at item number 2, as far as the commercial recreational fire pits, that's for combustible material in the fire pit. If it's a gas log fire pit, it doesn't apply for a screen or anything, because they don't produce they don't produce
No, sir.
in a gas
We, you know,
situation.
we do not require that. If it's a gas log application, then that's okay.
Okay, so it's primarily dealing with people burning combustible materials
Yes, sir.
in the fire pit. All right,
Yes,
thank you.
Mayor, with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve this.
First by Mr. Corbin. Second by Mr. Newton. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously on the first. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our last item of new business is consideration of a contract.
A project with the Community Development Block Grant Funds, CDBG funds, and it's part of our Stabilizing Our Neighborhoods initiative. Erica Kraft, our planning and our community development director, will present this item to you for your request and consideration of the bid award. Ms. Kraft.
Council and Mayor, we have before you 7 properties that we would like to have abated by Han Construction. As Mr. McEwen stated, we solicited for bids advertised on the website as well as in the newspaper, and we received 3 responses. The low bidder being Han Construction for $65,800. And we propose to fund this through the use of our community development block grant dollars, as we've been funding the other demolition projects. We have had these units tested. We're at the abatement stage, and then the conclusion would be the demolition of these blighted units.
Thank you, ma'am. Mayor Pro Tem.
Just question, Ms. Kraft. Just want to clarify, is the $65,800, that seems a whole lot just for abatement. I know the summary we have kind of contradicts itself. It says that we want to fund $65,800 for abatement, but then under the funding down here, it says that $65,800 is for demolition costs. Is this including abatement and demolition, or just abatement and difference?
The reason why it's referred to as demolition, this is a step in the project category of demolition, just as housing rehabilitation is a project activity area under eligible community development block grant, CDBG eligible activity, or we may have a project area of economic development, or it could be a public service or a number of activities. So you're correct. This is not the actual demolition contract, but it's a part of the category of the project area demolition, elimination of slum and blight.
Yeah, it kind of confused me when it says that y'all will fund the 65.8 demolition cost. Well, there's not really any demolition going on.
Abatement, to be more technical.
Good question. It's so much of that CDBG language that the feds use that it's kind of tough sometimes to translate, but.
I understand. Ms. Chapman?
So if you take the $65,800 and divide it by 7, you end up with about, I think it's $9,400, $9,200, $9,400, which seems really high relative to the other ones that I remember as doing demolition, the abatement process. Can you tell us how much generally we spend for abatement of houses of this size?
When we had our neighborhood initiative program, NIP award through the South Carolina State Housing Finance Development Authority, as you said, I saw prices that range from sometimes $5,000 to, I think one of the highest cost units I saw as high as $10,000 or more. And of course, each house stands alone and depending upon the circumstances, the materials that test as hot. I regret that I can't explain in technical terms for the abatement. Friable. Some of these houses had quite a bit in the shingles, in the vinyl flooring, sheetrock. It was a number of different variables and factors depending upon the square footage of each house. Other companies nearby that have bid it. In some instances, I noticed that the cost is higher oftentimes when you go with these larger companies. Even with the testing, we had 2 firms that were very large national firms that did the testing on the units versus in some cycles of our demolition, we've had local companies such as Phillips Recoveries or a number, Apex, it's been Trinity, a number of other different companies that are local, Davis and Floyd. It varies based upon our bid results. And in some instances with the state, we've had to reject and rebid if it exceeds.
Dean Hunter would be their costs generally were substantially less. And I'm just curious if we found out whether or not they received the opportunity to bid, or I know it went out for public, but it just struck me as.
They get direct mailings, direct phone calls every time, each time email to alert them that we have an opportunity for them to bid. And just so that you're aware, those companies that I mentioned, Phillips Recoveries, will be doing demolition of some of these units that are being abated by another company. And then Miller Construction, a local company, is abating some of the units. So Phillips already has a contract to demolish these units that we're talking about.
Okay, and last question is the cost that's shown here includes the air testing that is required that goes along with it, correct?
No, sir. Air testing, air testing monitoring is bidded separately. And the total cost for that for these units was $9,000. I don't have, I do, I brought it with me in case someone were to ask. We bidded both of these on the same day. And the cost was $9,300. West Environmental will be conducting air monitoring. They're a local company that we worked with in the past, and we haven't had any issues with them. Again, depending on the level of asbestos present in each site determines the number of days of air monitoring that they have to conduct.
So total cost for these per, if you divide it by the 7, is about $10,700 each.
Correct.
In addition to the demolition, it's probably gonna be another $7,000-8,000 on top of that.
Almost build a new one.
That was my, excuse me, Mayor, so how much, approximately, how much are we gonna have invested to demolish these, 7 properties?
Total phases, I didn't bring the other phase with me, but it could be approximately 150,000 or more. This is all part of what we've been working in the last several years when we were meeting about our focus area neighborhoods, our fans, when we went to Washington, and as well when we've continued and we did the rankings of prioritizing projects and ways to improve our neighborhoods, and eliminating slum and blight was one of the areas that we brought to you all before, that we're continuing with what we've submitted each year in those plans.
How many within the city limits of Anderson in the last, say, 15 years have we taken down?
I have to break it down by categories because of the different funding. I do know with our neighborhood initiative program, NIP, through state housing, we did 64 houses. And then we did through our neighborhood, excuse me, I misspoke a moment ago. May I correct myself? Neighborhood Stabilization Program, NSP, it's hard to keep up with the acronyms, but NSP, through state housing, we did 64 houses. The city did not own any of those units. We received consent forms from the owners and demolished the units. With our neighborhood initiative program, NIP, through state housing, we were able to acquire through the Anderson Community Development Corporation 18 single-family units that are blighted. And those units were demolished and remain in the ownership of the Anderson Community Development Corporation, of which they have to remain in ownership for a minimum of 3 years from the closing to acquire it. And it could be 18 units through that. With our community development block grant dollars, at that time, because of the funding that we had available through the state, we weren't funding as many demolition activities. We were doing housing rehabilitation, economic development loans, funding different projects through other eligible activities. The general fund, some time ago, I would say probably within the last 5 years or so, Mr. McKenzie has left, but the planning department worked with us. And over a 5-year span, I would estimate that they did over 100 houses. We did all of this research recently, and I can prepare that information to share with each of you as we've shared with the Anderson Independent Mail.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank
Going to say,
Great answer, thank you.
Mr. Eric, I mean, Ms. Craft, I think you do an excellent job in the process. I was just commenting that it seems like our cost, because from when we started, it's just escalating faster than what we're used to seeing. So with that, I recommend that we approve it as presented for general approval.
I second that,
First,
but I wanted to make a
Dr.
statement.
Thompson has a second. Dr. Thompson, you have the floor.
Okay. I will compliment Erica.
Thank you.
Involved comprehensive report. And I know that's a lot to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you.
What you're doing.
Ms. Stewart?
I'd just like to ask our city manager, assistant city manager, just looking at this, as the cost is rising, I know in the past, we've always, and I know before Mr. Caldwell was here and Wesley McConnell was here, he loved to get on the track code and tear down the houses, and we would, get our city dump trucks to haul these things to the site. I'd like to know, what would it take for us to add a couple more people onto our staff, because when I watched a house last week with Miller Construction right across from Forest Junior College, tear down that brick home right there. They had 2 tandem trucks there and a track code. They got rid of that thing in about 3 or 4 hours. Well, if we had that extra equipment or our old track code that we was using with all the dump trucks that we have, how much money would we save? Because this is just a drop in the bucket. Every 7 houses we tear down, we got 20 more cropping up. And so over the long haul, I think that the city would save a lot of money if we look at probably adding something and adding to our fleet where we could tear down houses ourselves, and once they're abated, instead of contracting that out, let us tear the houses down, our staff, and you could probably do it a whole lot cheaper.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Mr. Stewart. I've done it both ways. In a previous city, we did it in-house, and it's efficient. I mean, you could get it down very quickly, as you observe. I mean, they come down quick. The tipping fee sometimes will get you. But you will take a look at that. I mean, that's a good suggestion. Maybe we can speed up getting some of these houses down and maybe increase the numbers in which we're demolishing each year. So we'll take a look at that for you.
Because what, in the past, what we ran into is when we tried to do that, it pulled people like Larry Morris off of curb and sidewalk. And I don't want to do that to, pull off our other infrastructure projects, but have a couple extra people who would be dedicated to doing our housing demolition.
And we know we're going to be doing this from sometime in the future. So that's
A lot in the future.
We'll look at that.
If I may add, we don't necessarily need to purchase new equipment either. Some of the trucks can be rented on an hourly basis as long as it's scheduled. And, the dump trucks, you don't have to get a hoe or something to, dig them over with. But anyway, I think that's a great idea.
I think. Anything else, guys? Good conversation.
Thank
All
you.
those in favor, say aye. Opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
Administrative briefing, Mr. McEwen.
Just real quick, I want to comment on the Christmas tree lighting on downtown on Friday. It was a gorgeous night, great event, and many council members were there and participated, and such a wonderful event to have this time of year. And we appreciate the Main Street program, and particularly Carrie Jones for leading that effort and putting it together for us each year. Some aspects were added this year I thought certainly enhanced it, and it's certainly an enjoyable experience. A lot of people were downtown that night, which that's certainly a good goal to have. And then going right into Sunday, I tell you, what a gorgeous day for the parade. There are a lot of them that stayed around to eat in our local restaurants and spend time in our parks and so forth. And we have holiday ice going on, and so it's that was a great event.
Mr. McEwen, if I may add.
Yes, sir.
I spoke with Mr. Jones prior to the meeting and noted that the Main Street program has 50,000 followers on Facebook, and he publicized the Christmas tree lighting as well as our Christmas parade, and I think that may have had some help, but I will agree that it was one of the biggest turnouts I've ever seen for the Christmas parade. So compliments to everybody involved. I know our city staff is ones that put that on every year, and she's done it, I think, for 18 years or something.
Yes, and Bobby Bevel and his staff, Angie, but it does such a great job putting that together. It's a lot of work. I mean, you see how long the parade is, but it's very important to get the lineup right, and it's almost a year-round thinking about it. And so it's been well run for a long time, but man, we had a big crowd this time, and it was great to have that. Of course, we had our meeting tonight. This will be our only council meeting in December as we moved into the holidays. And we have the Anderson County Municipal Association meeting at 7 p.m. in Iva on the 12th. The city is observing Christmas holidays on December the 24th, December the 25th, and December the 26th, and New Year's on January the 1st. I was being careful there because I do want to acknowledge all those city employees that will be working. We always say the city offices are closed, we're observing this holiday and so forth, but we have so many people from public safety to sanitation that are working extra overtime to conveniently get your Christmas trash out and picked up very timely, and the leaves and so forth. And I want to applaud them as well for working during the holidays, because we have so many out there doing that. We're really never closed, but this is for city offices. And with that, Mr. Mayor and Council, that concludes what I have for you for tonight.
Don't forget about the employee luncheon on this Thursday, 11:30 at the Rec Center.
Great event.
Also, if I could mention Friday night, I thought the Christmas tree lighting was sort of neat. The way the county, the city, and also AMED participated. They had a large display for the kids, and it was, a neat partnership between the city, the county, and AMED.
Good.
Absolutely.
Great. long meeting, and I wish everybody who's watching us tonight Merry Christmas, and those in the audience still Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, John.
I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
First by Mr. Newton. Second by Mr. Chapman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned.